We're live. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our Q&A on studying music at Cambridge. We're really sorry not to be able to see you in person this year, but we're really looking forward to hearing your questions, and we'll do our very best to answer them. If you do have any questions, please just pop them in the live chat and we'll work our way through them. My name's Delphine Mordey. I'm the Outreach Coordinator here at the Faculty of Music, and I'm also Director of Studies in Music at Newnham College, Churchill College and Wolfson College. I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by two of my colleagues and by one of our final year students who has in fact recently graduated. So many congratulations to her. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves now, perhaps starting with you, Katharine.
Hello everyone, I'm Katharine Ellis. I rejoice in the title of the 1684 Professor of Music, which basically means that the university decided music was really important in 1684, which was just in time for the birth of three rather famous Baroque composers. I work particularly in my research on French, the long 19th century and the early 20th century, and I'm a fellow at Selwyn College.
Hey, Sam.
Hello everyone, my name is Sam Barrett. I'm a lecturer in music here at the faculty as well. I'm a specialist in medieval music, also lecture on some things in the more present day. I go up to jazz and other forms of associated music. I'm Director of Studies in Music at Pembroke College, and I've got interest in a whole variety of different types of music, from singing and organ music as well, and that kind of thing. So I look forward to talking to you about them.
Thank you. And Cheryl.
Hi everybody, my name is Cheryl. I recently graduated from Robinson College. My academic interests in music are film music, composition and theory, as well as ethnomusicology, and some musical activities I got involved in during my time at Cambridge were musical directing musical theatre shows. That's a bit of a mouthful. As well as conducting the university's Chinese orchestra and singing in my college's chapel choir.
Okay, thank you. So hopefully between us all, with our varied research interests and jobs and experiences, we should be well placed to answer your questions this afternoon. I can see quite a few of you joining the meeting at the moment, but while you think of your questions, thought we could perhaps start, Cheryl, if you could just tell us a little bit, based on your experience, about a kind of typical day in your life as a music student.
Yeah, okay. So that usually begins in the morning with lectures. And so lectures are your more sort of general types of teaching, where you get one lecturer who lectures to a larger group of students on one of the modules that you'll be taking. And so these are usually 1 hour or 1.5 hours. And that is basically what my morning will look like. And also, so I'll have either 1 or 2 lectures in the morning. And then after that, go for lunch with friends at nearby Sidgwick site, maybe. Lots of nice cafes nearby at different colleges. And then I will go, the afternoon, I will usually arrange my supervisions for then. As the supervisions are small group teachings where you get to, one supervisor will talk to you and a small group basically of you and your peers. So that usually one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three, just to kind of really go through what was previously discussed in a particular module in a lecture. And this is your chance to really kind of delve into the topic and have some nice academic discussion about each module or whatever content is being covered. And sometimes in the afternoons, I'll also have different rehearsals then as well, whether this is for different ensembles or different performances, for example. And ultimately, it's kind of up to you to choose how you want to structure these things in your life, because, it's up to you to schedule them, basically. So there is no rigid schedule for supervisions or other activities. And then in the evenings, I will plan my free time, or whether that's more rehearsals, doing supervision work, that's also very important, and also doing some socializing with my friends as well. So that's kind of what a day in my life looks like.
And this is a question we get asked quite a lot. Roughly how many essays or pieces of work do you think you would expect to be writing each week?
Yeah, I think I'd expect probably 2 essays a week. 2 essays a week usually is pretty standard, and there will be, if you're taking different modules, for example, composition will have different types of exercises, or you'll probably be working on your coursework as well. So I think that's kind of the workload, I think.
Yeah, and of course, I guess, as you were saying, it's going to vary a little bit from student to student, depending on, especially after the first year, what options they're taking. But even within that first year, where we've got an increasing number of options in our new tripos, and Katharine can maybe talk a little bit more about that shortly. So another question that's come in earlier is how much time there is for independent practice if you're an instrumentalist. Sam, do you want to perhaps have a go at that one?
Okay, so we do have on the course, as you might imagine, lots of students who want to continue doing serious instrumental practice and want to carry that on, whether they're simply playing in the university ensembles, doing music as part of the tripos, or whether they have their view on a musical career, professional career afterwards. So it's certainly possible to do it because so many people have. Finding time to do it is a challenge, but it is possible. There's always time in the morning before lectures begin. I'm always amazed by the fact that people at school seem to get up early, but university students tend to get a bit later. However, if they do get up early, lectures typically don't begin until about 10. It's typical. You may get just the odd one at 9:30 these days, even pushing back beyond that. But there's still plenty of time in the morning. And then there'll be time through the day. If you decide to schedule it, to find that extra hour here, that extra hour there, it is a possibility. So there are some students doing up to 2 hours a day, I would say. But what we don't find is the students doing 4 or 5 hours a day, as you might do at conservatoire. That would be really difficult to maintain alongside your degree.
Okay, thank you. Another question that's come in earlier today is how much opportunity is there to perform or compose in genres outside of Western classical tradition? I wonder, Katharine, if you could perhaps talk about that a little bit with respect to the new tripos that we have coming in.
I think there's a lot more attention being given in the new tripos to musics that sit outside the Western tradition. This is a course that we're effectively rebalancing, thinking very much about the way that the Western tradition intersects with other traditions. And I would expect that the ways in which composition, both stylistic composition and free composition work, will reflect that openness. So, for instance, something that we have been talking about is the potential to bring in styles of African pianism, which themselves, of course, are products of colonialism, but which are nevertheless something that becomes a very interesting mixture of African continental rhythms, plus jazz-based rhythms, plus the Western classical tradition. And this kind of mix and match, this kind of mixing is something that we're going to be exploring a great deal alongside students in these creative parts of the course.
Thank you. That's really exciting, the way it's developing. And that's so it's opportunities developing, particularly in composition performance. But of course, there are opportunities to study genres outside of the Western classical tradition as part of other courses as well. I wonder, Sam, if you could talk a little bit about that as someone who has indeed taught such courses.
Okay, so yes, at every year of the tripos now, there are opportunities to study music from outside of the Western classical tradition. So in the first year, we have a course called Music and Musicology Today, which looks at explicitly on musics outside the Western classical tradition. This year, we'll be looking at blues and rap and jazz, as well as music from Southeast Asia, and then coming back to electroacoustic forms of music as well in the West in the present day. Then into the second year, we have an Introduction to Ethnomusicology paper, which is a standard part of the Tripos, which is looking at music from across the world. And then by the time we're moving into the third year, we have specialist courses, and those can be all sorts of different musics can be studied. I myself have taught previously at that point. I've taught various jazz papers, including one on Miles Davis most recently. So there's it's happening more and more and more. I could name more third year papers. We have one that's explicitly called Decolonizing Music. Looks at, indeed, as well as looking at music outside of the Western canon, looks at the problems of talking about it and how do we think about, how do we rationalize music outside the Western canon when we're situated in the West, and what does it mean to do that?
Thank you. And as we're sort of describing some of these elements of the course, of what we call the Tripos, our Cambridge music degree, it's clear how many different options you can start to choose and to build up a course for yourself over the course of the 3 years. I wonder, Cheryl, if you could maybe say a little bit about the pathway that you chose through the music degree and how you were able to tailor it to your particular interests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically throughout the Tripos, it's a triangle shape in the sense that it's more broad in first year, and you get to increasingly specialize in whatever pathway that you want to, by basically, you get more choice as you progress throughout the degree. So personally, I still am very interested in film composition theory, film music theory, as well as ethnomusicology. So by the end, in my third year, all my papers were essentially revolving around these topics. So I did a paper on film music theory. I took the stylistic composition module with the specialization in film composition as well. And I also did the decolonizing the ear module, as Sam has previously mentioned. And so I think as you progress, you kind of start to feel out what your interests are. And so by the end of your degree, you're really working with the modules and the areas that you really want to work with. And so that was the particular direction that I chose to partake in.
Thank you. So we've got a question in the chat. How will the college assessments work virtually? So this is something that we are thinking about a lot at the moment. Sam, would you like to take this question maybe?
Yeah. So Cambridge at the moment is moving towards online interviews. That is where things are going. And the question of how to run these is something that we're very much discussing at the moment. They won't be quite as they were, the normal music interviews. We will try to cover what we would normally cover in an interview, but we're going to have to adapt them. And I think the honest answer at the moment is we are right in the middle of these discussions. So because interviews happen at individual colleges, and it's the decision of the Director of Studies in Music at that college as to precisely how they want to go with their interview. We have to get together all the Directors of Studies to have that conversation, to think about how it's going to happen overall. We're very hopeful that we'll be able to move towards a common policy. We have pretty much a shared framework at the moment of the types of things we ask people to do interview, and that's on our website. But there are ones we're clearly going to have to look at, things like oral, things like keyboard, things like how to deal with any practical musical components. And we're thinking our way through that at the moment. So the honest answer is we're going to know in, I'd say, a couple of weeks' time. We hope to be able to say precisely how we're going to do this, but we can't quite say at the moment.
Thank you. I think one of the important things perhaps to reiterate about college assessments, college interviews, is that what we're looking for won't change, however it is that we run the interviews. So even though we'll move online this time around rather than in person, we're still looking for students who are going to be best suited to our course and take advantage of it, who are really passionate about studying music, really motivated and committed to learning. And all those aspects, we can do that, we can look for that through online interviews, just as we would through interviews in person. And when it comes to preparing for the interviews as well, much of the advice that we would have given before remains exactly the same, which is to read as widely as you can about music, whether it's around your A-level subjects or beyond, other subjects within music that fascinate you, to listen as much as possible, and to think about what it is that you're reading, what you're listening to, and then to get some practice, if you can, in talking through your ideas. So you might, for example, want to go over your A-level work, so particular modules that you're interested in as part of your A-levels, to go over your personal statement as well, and we can talk about that a little bit more if you'd like us to think about what you've written in your personal statement, to think about the written work that you've submitted, so any essays, harmony and counterpoint exercises, that sort of thing, to go over those, to think around them, and to talk through then with a family member, a friend, a teacher, just to get some practice at articulating your ideas. And that kind of preparation is the same whether it's an in-person interview or an online interview. Related to that, we had a question a little bit earlier about whether a student would be at a disadvantage if they haven't studied harmony and counterpoint or keyboard skills before coming to Cambridge. And I think this is a question that comes up a lot. We're very much aware that lots of students are now not able to study harmony and counterpoint as part of their A-level syllabus, and many won't have encountered keyboard skills before. Sam, do you want to say a little bit more about that, actually, as someone who teaches harmony and counterpoint?
Okay, you're certainly right there to point out, Delphine, that this is a common situation actually now. There are whole areas of the UK where harmony and counterpoint is not taught at A-level. And so we don't necessarily expect the students have it before they arrive, have skills in these areas. So what we're looking for at interview is an aptitude and ability to take on new ideas and to take on ways of thinking about harmony and counterpoint. And when people get here, we spend time in the first year using the college teaching system that we have, that is one of the great treasures of this place, using time in individual supervisions, often one-to-one, sometimes two-to-one in a supervision, building up those skills with our students over the course of the first year so that they can become confident in using notes for themselves, composing notes for themselves, in talking about notes, about how they work, about the technicalities of music. And it's through that first year that those skills are really built up, so that our intent is that by the end of the first year, everybody will have started with harmony and counterpoint. And then as things go on, there's a chance then to build on that. And we certainly have seen, and I've seen it myself in my teaching, people who've come with no harmony and counterpoint skills whatsoever have become fascinated by it, have become greatly interested in learning this while they're here, and become pretty fluent with it, indeed, by the time they leave, and confident at using it. So the opportunities are certainly there should you wish to choose them. However, if you wish to simply gain an introductory knowledge and then pass on to other things, that's possible too.
Thank you. And that's so important to remember as well. I think that the first year is an opportunity to discover things that you might not realize that you're interested in, and to try things out. It's worth noting here too that our degree is entirely weighted on the final year, which, as Cheryl has explained, is when you can choose all of your options and sort of compile your final year choices. But that means that the first and second year are really a time when you can develop your skills and learn and make mistakes, and learn to remedy those mistakes without that actually counting towards your final degree. It's that chance to explore and to learn and to develop.
Now, just add to that, there will be people coming into the first year who have all sorts of different strengths and all sorts of different elements of the music degree at Cambridge, which they've never done before. We're often asked about the harmony and counterpoint one, but there will be some people who come in who've never done any ethnomusicology, and some people who come in who've never done any composition, and they're really quite worried about that. So the first year is a way of enabling everybody to, in a kind of safe space, to explore and to experiment and to take a risk and to find out whether they have some hidden ability and hidden interest that actually surprises them and transforms their second and third years. And that's the thing that we always look forward to seeing, is when somebody surprises themselves by suddenly discovering why they've come to Cambridge, which was not what they thought when they made the application.
And there's another side of this as well, which is that we also get students coming in who've had very little experience of writing essays before coming to Cambridge, but may have actually done quite a bit of harmony and counterpoint or sort of notes-based studies, and maybe alongside science papers or maths. And so for those students, we're also very much able to offer support in learning to develop the writing skills. Lots of the colleges have specialist study support to help with that. So once again, wherever your strengths lie, we're able to sort of help to push you and to challenge you and to bring that along. But where you feel you need more support or have less experience, then we can help with that too, thanks to the nature of our teaching system with the small group supervisions. And also your director of studies is always there to help too. So every student who comes to Cambridge, you're admitted to a college where you'll have a director of studies who's there as your academic mentor, guiding you through your degree. So there's a lot of support there to help you with any bits that you feel you're less comfortable with. Okay. So we have lots more questions coming in now. I'm going to take the keyboard skills question next, as that sort of follows on from what we've been talking about. So what kind of things are assessed in keyboard skills? I think that one is for you, Sam.
Yes, keyboard skills. Actually, we renamed this paper a few years ago to a practical skills paper, because it's not just keyboard anymore. So in the first year, there were a series of things that we tried to test through your playing. And it was traditionally done through the keyboard. So that would include harmonization of a melody. It would include reading figured bass. And it would include some score reading, so reading from clefs that are not just treble and bass, but might have other clefs involved in that. So those would be 4. And then there's also now an improvisation element. So you can choose to do jazz improvisation alongside that, and we give you some basic tuition. Now, those 4 I mentioned are traditionally done through the keyboard. There are now options for doing them through instrumental playing as well. Harmony is obviously a little bit limited, but there are ways of doing that on, let's say, on some other harmony instruments, such as the guitar. To a certain extent the harp. There are ways of doing this. There are ways of reading figured bass and doing it on another instrument. So this is an area that we're really working on year by year to open out to other instruments, because what we're really trying to test is not so much people's facility. You would only need to have really basic keyboard skills to get through that test, but what their understanding of how music works, and we're testing that on a sort of moment by moment basis. And we're testing that through the keyboard. Can you read more than one clef? Can you come up with harmony on the spur of the moment to fit a melody? Can you read a figured bass? Because we can't get inside your head, we have to have some way of measuring that through sound. And a very good way is to do it through the keyboard. But we would normally say a keyboard player with a roundabout, it doesn't have to be fixed, but a roundabout grade 5 facility would be fine for getting through that first year.
I should add, I have had students with almost no prior keyboard skills, who've come in and sort of gradually got up to speed and have excelled, particularly in other areas, but also over the course of the year with one-to-one tuition, developed those skills. So it's not something to worry about. Got a question here. Are the essays dissertation length, or are they more likely to be a couple of pages? So this is, I think, so in reference to our supervision essays that we have. So the sort of weekly supervision essays are usually around about 1,500 words in length. That's about the sort of average length. We do also have dissertation options. So in first year, there's an extended essay option, which is, Katharine can correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's 3,000 words.
Yes.
So about twice the length of a standard, a regular essay, supervision essay. And then we also have a dissertation option in our second year, which is between 5,000 and 7,000 words long. And then a final year dissertation option, which is up to 10,000 words. So it's a range. And sometimes supervisors will set slightly shorter essays. So sometimes they might ask for 750 words as a particular kind of exercise. So there's a bit of variation. It's about 1,500. Okay, another question here is, please could I ask what you look for specifically in a personal statement? I'm not sure there's anything specific that we look for, would be the first thing to say, perhaps, because we're looking for something that is personal, something that's written by you about your interests in music and your particular passion for the subject. And also some evidence of your interest in this as a subject of intellectual inquiry. So it's not just about performance, but about what interests you about music as an academic subject. Katharine, Sam, would you like to add anything perhaps to that?
I think I would really just develop, Delphine, your point about the what I would term the kind of curiosity that I certainly like to see in a personal statement. Somebody who has obviously done their A-level or comparable study, but is also curious enough to look beyond it. You know, using the internet wisely is now one of the best ways and one of the quickest ways to ask and answer the what if question or the I wonder if question. And to have a conversation with students who have obviously been doing that, maybe in relation to things that are part of grade exams, for instance, trying to get a sense of some of the historical context behind some of the pieces that you might be doing, or pieces that you might be doing or have done in the past. As part of an ensemble, as part of a choir, really actually thinking around and being ready also not to believe everything that you read, to be ready to critique and to think, actually, there's another way of thinking about this. So it's that kind of curiosity. And if you can begin to draw some of those ideas into your personal statement, let us know what you've read, what's interested you. You can bet that you'll be asked about it. So don't put anything down if you really don't want to be asked about it. And don't put it down if you haven't read it, because you'll get found out. But you know, it is an opportunity to show us something of how your mind works and to begin to tease that out in a good conversation at the interview.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're really looking for more something along those lines rather than just listing everything that you've done. So I think it is very easy for particularly those who do a lot of performance to just list all the choirs and orchestras and so on that they've been involved in. That tells us something, and so you can include some of that information too, by all means, but it's going beyond that that we really want to see. So we have a question here about composition. How much does composition feature in the degree, and is it possible to do additional composition projects? Katharine, perhaps you could say a little bit about how it features, and then we might turn to Cheryl as a student composer.
Yeah. One of the things with the degree as we have it now is that in the first year, students can't do both composition and performance. And in designing the new degree, one of the things where we said we really have to try and sort this out is to create a structure where students could do both composition and performance. And that's what we've done. So there is a half paper in composition which will involve you doing just one decent sized composition as your examination portfolio. And then when you get to year 2, there is a composition portfolio, which is a whole paper. And then in year 3, there is also a composition portfolio. And there is, of course, encouragement, and there is a structure by which you can get recordings done of your compositions, work with fellow students. There are composition workshops which take place where Richard Corsten and Jeremy Thurlow bring in some really quite starry names to talk to students and to talk about their own techniques and their own compositional trajectories. And we find that students get really inspired by what they hear, and the answers to the questions that they're able to pose in those workshops. So it's not just you sitting doing your own composition, it's actually a whole experience, which includes projects. There is the possibility of international projects when funding comes through, and Richard is always very proactive about finding ways for students to have their works performed. We've had students winning composition competitions. We've had them having their works performed at Kettle's Yard and in various other performing spaces nationally. So there's a lot of engagement and a lot of excitement within composition, quite apart from what you do actually for the exams.
Thank you. Cheryl, do you want to say a little bit about your experiences as a composer?
Yeah, I can. So I think, of course, you can compose as part of your degree, but a lot of the composing, in my experience, has been outside my degree. And I just want to emphasize there are so many opportunities. And of course, this is pre-COVID, when performances were still a thing, and hopefully they will still be a thing. But there are composition festivals, there are musical theatre shows. Some chapel choirs will have various choral composing competitions. There we go. Choral composing competitions that they just put out open calls for. So really, even if you didn't have, a reason of why you want to perform or record something, you can literally just get a bunch of friends together and be like, look, there's this, I wrote this thing, should we play? And they're like, yeah, okay. And then the next week, is recorded and done and everything. So I think in terms of engagement and opportunities compose and have your music featured or performed or recorded, there are plenty of opportunities for you to do so.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's always worth reiterating that one of the great things, I think, or one of the things that we're really lucky to have at Cambridge, again, sort of in pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID circumstances, is that there are lots of ready-made opportunities for you to get involved in composition and performance as part of the degree or as part of one of the existing music societies or musical ensembles. But we also have the spaces and the resources and the people that if there's something that you really want to do, if you want to write a musical and put it on and then perhaps take it to Edinburgh, then there are the spaces and fellow students and staff indeed sometimes to help you to achieve that. If you really want to play in a quartet made up of harp, soprano, cello, harp, soprano, double bass and clarinet, which is what one of our groups of students did, then you can form that ensemble, ask your friends to write music for you and hire a space, put on a concert. So there are just so many opportunities to try something new that you want to do, or to get involved in something that's already there. So it's really the variety there, and the opportunity is immense. Okay, we have a question that's come in before about performance and and the faculty course. So does the faculty help with finding instrumental teachers? I wonder, Sam, if you could say a little bit about that and performance at the faculty.
Yeah, sure. So we have a director of performance, she's Maggie Faultless, and she is always happy to talk to individual performers about their needs, especially if they're looking for new teachers at the point they come to university, and the ways in which they want to develop as performers. So there is that one-to-one possibility available, especially for music students, it has to be said. Then there's also guidance given through the course. So actually she gives some sessions as part of the first year preparation for performance within the Tripos, and those are general, and those are to do with guidance in all sorts of different performing matters, sort of stage presence, or how to go about practice, or how to go about finding a partner for your performance, and what are the concerns here. We sometimes have yoga sessions and things like this. So there's a whole series of things that are also around performance that we provide through something called a practicing performance series. So as well as helping people find teachers, there is general discussion about performance and general new ideas about different ways to do different kinds of performers. And those all come under the remit of our director of performance, Maggie Faultless. And we're also exploring at the moment, part of this new COVID situation, of introducing students to ways of presenting themselves online as well, and how they're going to go about doing videos of performance and how to do that well, and indeed we're incorporating that into our examination structure as we speak. So adapting performance in these times is also something we're looking at a lot.
And I wonder if you, and perhaps Katharine, could say a little bit about how performance works within the new course that we're offering. Katharine, perhaps, could you say?
I'll gladly do that. So reiterating what I said before about performance and composition, performance is now something that you can do as a half paper in the first year, and then that expands to a whole paper in the second year, where a recital goes alongside a lecture course in performance studies. So this again is the practical and the music is good to think with aspect of the Cambridge course. And then in the third year you do a longer recital. And as part of the video options that we're bringing in, it's possible to present yourself as a conductor, and it's possible to do many different things that we had struggled with and thought were really not possible to bring into the frame of the solo recital. Now, if you think about performance, even more liberally than that, and think about what it is to be say a repetiteur, what some of the jobs are in the classical music scene particularly, then we have practical skills papers which are also absolutely rooted in ensemble singing, in ensemble conducting, for choral ensemble, for the kinds of keyboard skills that you would need were you to join an opera company, or were you to be somebody who became an orchestral pianist, for instance, things like that. And we run those courses at years 2 and year 3. So if you were that kind of performer and you were equally interested in being a soloist on stage, or doing something with a small ensemble as part of a recital option, and the more backstage element of being a jobbing musician, then you could do nearly 1/3 of your degree in performance by combining those two kinds of performance course together as you go through.
Thank you. You touched briefly on ensemble conducting as part of that. This is a question we get a lot about conducting opportunities in Cambridge, and how much it's possible to do that as part of the course, and what opportunities lie beyond that. And Sam, could you say a little bit about that, perhaps?
Okay, I'll say things related to the course, and maybe that Cheryl will have things to say about outside of the course. So in the course, there's an area we're developing quite a lot at the moment. So we now have a choral conducting as part of what we do. So you can be trained in and assessed in your the conducting choirs, and the faculty. I'll just concentrate on that for the moment. We provide a course in choral conducting. We obviously have many choral conductors around the university who could be drawn on for that. We're also introducing conducting more generally into our performance papers, especially in the third year, where you can now, if you've been specialised in conducting and taking advantage of the conducting training opportunities that come through the wider Cambridge scene, which I won't fully explain here, but there are many visiting conductors coming to Cambridge, for example, and some of those will give master classes, and some of those are indeed part of our practicing performance series. So people who've done that and taken advantage of the opportunities, they can now include a video of themselves conducting an instrumental group of whatever size, and be assessed on that formally as part of their conducting skills. So this is an area we've been thinking carefully about for a number of years, and are beginning now to introduce it alongside other options in a world opened up indeed by online presence, by video, by the necessity of having these skills. Actually opens up a wider series of assessment and training for us as well.
Cheryl, do you want to add anything about other opportunities? I know we've talked quite a bit about all the things one can do, but
okay. So as you may or may not be aware, there are many different ensembles in Cambridge, many of which require a conductor. So if you want to get into a more sort of big orchestra conducting, that's a type of ensemble you're looking for. Various orchestras will host conducting competitions. So this is, for example, CUSO, Cambridge University Symphony Orchestra, QO, the Wind Orchestra, QO, but confusingly without the W, so CUO might also have their own conducting competitions. I know the Graduate Orchestra also does a conducting competition as well. So again, I'm not sure if these things will be happening this year, but if they are, then definitely check it out, or if you're interested in conducting. If not, then there's also musical theater, there's musical directing, various productions, and that's a little different to sort of big concert orchestra types of conducting. But if you're also interested in that, there's also opportunities for you to get involved in that as well. And yeah, I think conducting wise, there are, as Sam mentioned, lots of visiting conductors, and I know that if you are a woman in conducting, the Royal Philharmonic Society also does a Women in Conducting workshop that, again, may not necessarily be based in Cambridge, but they do host it every year. So if you're especially a woman in conducting, do go check that out.
Very good advice. I think one of the things I've been really pleased to see in recent years is the number of students who've been coming in with almost sometimes no conducting experience at all, but have really wanted to have a go. And often a college orchestra is a good place to start, to find your feet, and then go on to try for one of the conducting competitions with one of the university orchestras. So in addition to the University Music Society orchestras that Cheryl mentioned, there are other sort of university-wide ensembles. So there are lots of opportunities, even if you've never done it before, to have a go and get some experience. And there are a few of my students who've done that, who've then gone on to conduct ensembles after they've left university. So again, it's that idea of trying things out and exploring is just so important. Well, we're slowly coming towards the end of our session here today. I wondered, Cheryl, whether we started with you talking about a kind of typical day, but now as you've reached the end of your degree, whether you could tell us about any particular highlight of your experience here.
Yeah, I think for me, there's two parts to that. One is academically. I know many students, when they get here, they don't quite necessarily agree with all the pressures and everything, but I really enjoyed supervisions, and because I really liked talking with someone or debating with them about a subject, or a module that I was passionate about. So it sounds a bit odd, but I did enjoy being grilled, and Delphine would know because she grilled me. She grilled me pretty hard. She was nice though, she was very nice. But just having that kind of academic discussion, and like after graduating, now I'm kind of left with the thought, who's going to argue with me about academic topics? And so I think if you do apply, this is something to cherish. I think outside of academics, it's just being in the general Cambridge music scene, because again, it's so alive, and there are always performances happening. There are lots of, even if people don't study music, there are plenty of people who are interested as well. So absolutely, you can find someone to perform together, to just jam together, to play one of your compositions. So for me, those were my two biggest highlights about studying at Cambridge.
Thank you. There is one question that's just come in. Are there any college music societies which regularly host talks from successful musicians? I'm not sure that any of them do this regularly, but certainly colleges do invite speakers from time to time, which might sometimes be musicians, especially former students of the college who've gone on to have careers as musicians might be invited back. And we do that at faculty level as well. So we've already mentioned the Practicing Performance series, where we have invited musicians who come often to run masterclasses, but we sometimes have talks as well. So once again, it's just such a rich environment. There are events going on, tens and tens of events going on every night in Cambridge. And so some of those events will be talks, will be performances indeed by established musicians. And Sam, I think, wants to add to that.
I would just say a part of that is that we have a series of associated ensembles connected with the faculty. So we have the Britten Sinfonia, who concentrate on modern things. We have the Academy of Ancient Music, who are doing old forms of music. We had the Indelian String Quartet until recently, and we will have another. So there are a series of professional musicians who are connected to the faculty who do events, and increasing their involvement also in running events with our students. So that connection between students and professional musicians in whatever field it happens to be is something that goes on all the time as part of the ecology of the place.
Just following up on that, follow-up question is, in that case, would there be scope to start a university society specifically for inviting musicians to talk?
Why not?
Yeah. Why not?
And especially, I think one of the things that we've all found through this slightly weird situation in which we're now in is that there are some advantages to Zoom, not least that we can talk to you today, wherever you are, without you having to travel to come and see us. And so I think there are opportunities now perhaps for us to be able to invite musicians to come and speak to us more easily without having to pay the airfares. So yeah, watch the space maybe. It's always something we're willing to have a conversation about. Well, so thank you so much for all of your questions. Thank you to Sam, Katharine and Cheryl for joining me this afternoon. We are now out of time. I'm going to stay on the chat for a little while after I've closed the meeting. So if you do have any questions that you'd still like to ask, then pop them in the chat. Alternatively, you can always email me at outreach@musnus.cam.ac.uk, and I'll be happy to try and answer any questions that you have. In the meantime, thank you once again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the virtual open days. Okay.